Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Cleo.
Brittany, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to talk to you. I just want to start by saying that you are so incredible in this role. People are still talking about this character you played, and it's been 15 years.
Yes.
So I just want to say, as one actor to another, just huge congratulations on playing such an iconic role.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so, and I mean, I'm the same. I can't believe it's been 15 years. That's
Yeah. Time
insane.
flies, hey? Yeah, because
Time
people often
flies.
ask me, about really specific things in episodes, and
Mm.
just gotta go, guys. It was a while ago. I
It
don't
was a
maybe you don't
long
remember all of
time
those
ago.
details. It's going back.
I don't remember things from shows I did like 5 years ago. like,
Exactly.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's
Exactly.
right.
Oh, you look so different. And I kind of go, well, yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a little while.
Oh, exactly.
Amazing. Um, so can you tell us a bit about the audition process? How you found out about, oh, first of all, did you know about H2O as a show when you found out you had the audition for it?
I actually didn't. I
Mm,
hadn't heard of it before. But it was season one was on TV as the auditions for season two were happening. So
gotcha.
I was watching them kind of leading up to auditioning. I think I might have had enough notice to see one or two episodes
Mhm.
because this was pre everything being on YouTube and all of that. So I literally had to wait till the day of the week it was on and watch it that afternoon. I hadn't heard of it at all.
Mm,
Um, but I did go through a fair few auditions. I did an audition in Sydney first. I think only one, possibly two. I can't remember now. And then had to go to Queensland afterwards. So I did my first one, was just like a normal audition. I think we did the scene where Charlotte is in Cleo's room and she's like looking at herself in the mirror with
with
the
the
necklace
pendant, yeah, yeah.
Cleo comes in because I remember having to do that in the audition, and so I remember that was kind of the first audition scene, and then um, I had to go and do kind of like a chemistry test with the other cast, with Angus especially,
Mm,
who plays Lewis, because we had so much to do with each other.
mm,
Um, so we did that, and then there was also, I want to say there was three or maybe four of us that were kind of the last few to be chosen from, and we had kind of a swimming audition as well. I feel like
Amazing.
every time you audition for something where there's like a certain skill,
Yeah,
everybody's like, yeah, like I
I
can
can
ride a
do it. Yeah.
horse, okay, of course I can. And then we're like, we'll just worry about that if we get the job, which is what you're told not to do, but everyone
But
does
we
it.
do
So
it. We do it.
every girl that was there was like, had written like professional level as a swimmer or whatever. They say like, how confident are you at swimming? And we were all like, yeah,
Yeah.
like basically Olympic level swimming. Like what else? What else do you want from us? So then it was like, okay, guys, we've got this swimming test. And we were all going, oh, God.
Oh,
But it wasn't too bad from memory. I think it was more of like a camera test type thing, just in like a big lap pool,
wow.
which is where later when I had the job, that's where we would go to train and do like our underwater training and stuff. It was just this random lap pool in Brisbane. But yeah, so there was a fair few uh, stages to the
Mm,
audition. I couldn't tell you now like how long that spanned
mm,
over, but there was a fair bit of it, and I was excited for the role and I was excited for the show as I was auditioning. But that last one, getting up to Queensland and kind of meeting the other cast, and you know, that's when you start to get really close like that. That is when you sort of start to really hope you're going to get that opportunity. So it was after
mm,
sort of meeting everyone else, and I'd been in the production office, and yeah, I think there was still a couple of girls, but they were sort of treating all of us the same and
mm.
having some fittings and doing camera tests and all of that. So it was starting to feel very real, but then still had to go home and wait for about a week you know, before you hear anything, which is torture.
Worst. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes, it was a pretty long process. I think coming into season 2 as well, with the rest of the cast already established, that was kind of important to kind of see how a new person would fit with everyone, with the rest of the cast. And that's where the idea to dye the hair came up with, because, you know, we're different, and, you know, all of that kind of comes into play of how everybody's going to, what the dynamic will be between everyone. So yeah, that was all part of the process. And thankfully, I think that once I heard that I had the role, I think the turnaround was pretty quick. I was pretty much straight up in Queensland, and
Wow.
the ball was rolling kind of straight away. So
So
hectic.
cool. Amazing. Yeah, so that was also my question of, so you knew that this character was going to be a mermaid and going to be swimming. Did they tell you that in the callback rounds, or was that kind of mentioned in the initial audition?
I think it was mentioned. I think it was a thing because they didn't want somebody who completely couldn't swim, or, you know, had a fear of water or anything like that. I don't think it was made a big deal of, but it was on the form.
Okay, cool.
Can you do this kind of thing? Which
Gotcha.
sometimes, you know, I've gone for other jobs where you've had to say certain things like that, and it hasn't ended up even really being a big deal.
Yeah.
So it wasn't sort of disclosed how much of that there would be, or what the role was going to be, or anything like that. And then, yeah, then we had the swimming test, and I still didn't know until reading all the scripts, really, how that was all going to unfold.
Yeah. You spoke about the mermaid training. How was that experience? What was your experience as a swimmer? Like, probably the same as most of us, right?
Like, swimming experience barely mattered in the end, because it just wasn't the same as real swimming. You just had to be
You just had to float around.
yeah, like willing to go underwater, really, because nothing about it is the same as swimming. Once you're in the tail, that's it. You can't really move. So we would literally like lie on our bellies and be zipped in. Which there's behind the scenes photos of these. They'd lie us on like a yoga mat and zip us in, and then literally pull up the yoga mat and we'd roll in.
And just roll. Yeah.
Just flop into the water.
Yeah.
You couldn't move. Like, they were big and heavy. So once your legs were together, that was it. There was more of the training was like how to, you know, when you think of normal, like on land acting, we're hitting our marks and things like that. And it would be the same thing underwater. There'd be floating markers or whatever, and how to stop. Because the tails themselves were really powerful. And looking at it, I was sort of thinking, oh, I'm going to have to really work hard to work this thing. But it actually wasn't, because it had so much weight and so much power. You'd end up actually going too fast, and stopping would be the problem. You'd have to really like hit the brakes.
Push yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. You just had all this weight and this massive tail, you know, my big old dancer legs pushing you along. It was like, and it was the best feeling as well. And they would always be saying, okay, like slow down, just chill, because you just get in there and you're like, yes. It feels awesome. So it was that kind of technical stuff, and like breath holding as well, making sure we could hold our breath, keep our eyes open, and try to keep your face kind of normal while you're under there as well. So you're not looking like you're holding your breath. And, you know, all of this shot first thing in the morning at SeaWorld, when the water is absolutely freezing as well, of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it was all that kind of stuff. We'd swim a lot of laps. You know, I'd be mermaid tail, swimming costume, top, and goggles on, going up the length of this lap, which I have a few pictures of that as well.
So cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's just one of those things you look back on and you're like, wow, what a cool, crazy, just random life experience that was.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Last year, I did like a merman photo shoot.
Cool.
And so I got to wear like a silicone tail and stuff. And it was cool. I mean, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as heavy as the H2O ones. But it was like a little taste, a little feel.
Yeah.
And something I'd never thought about before, and I was like, of course this makes sense, is that how you have to like breathe out in order to like sink down.
Yeah.
And so that was something that really got me, because, you know, we're used to going and holding our breath like this, but if you do that, you don't go down. So then I'd have to go hold your breath like that, which is so much harder,
painful. And I think it freaks your body out more as well.
Definitely.
You don't take another breath in. I think your heart rate goes up much quicker as well, because it starts to think that you're drowning. We kind of would sort of hyperventilate a little bit, because it puts more oxygen into your blood and into your body. So I can't remember how many counts it would be, but they would count backwards, and we would kind of go and then you kind of get as much oxygen going into you as possible. And then we would actually be under with like half a breath. So you wouldn't have a full breath in, and it would just be kind of half.
Gotcha.
That then you kind of slowly let out, so that so you could sink to the bottom, and which just doesn't sound like it would work. But for whatever reason, that weird hyperventilating thing just kind of does flood you with a bit of extra oxygen, so that you can stay under for longer.
Cool.
Another weird little thing that was part of it.
What an insane experience, especially for like a young actor, to like go through that training and then to be in the water with dolphins and like fish and that's so insane.
Shoot that one again, there was a shark crossing the frame, or like what?
Like sorry what?
Life in the shot. Stuff like that it was cool at the time, but it's also, you know, when you're there and you're focused and you're just trying to do a great job, it's sort of the stuff that you look back on later.
Definitely.
Like, holy crap. Like even just at the end of the day, wow, actually that was really cool. But you're not necessarily like in the moment going, oh my God, because you're just trying to focus on the job kind of thing. And then, once it's all over, and especially as well, you know, afterwards it would be on TV and people would be asking questions of what was this like? Oh, that's so cool. And it makes you stop and be like, actually, that is really cool. That is actually awesome that I got to do that, you know? Yeah, amazing.
But you're so right. You kind of get into that mind frame of the job that you're doing.
Oh, totally.
And then you kind of, I mean, it's the same, like I've spoken to friends who are, you know, been on Broadway, which is obviously like the pinnacle for like a musical theater person. And they always say it's like when they were doing it, to be honest, it really just felt like another show. And then afterwards it's like, oh my God, like that was Broadway, like that, you know, it's you kind of just, no,
absolutely. I think that about so many things. I had a really great childhood, honestly. I did a lot of acting as a kid. And I had a great time, but I just didn't appreciate it as much as like looking back, you know, being older, and especially later in my acting career when I was starting to really have to work for it more. I wasn't working as much and I was going out on all these auditions, and you look back on some of the things that I actually got to do. I was just like, that's amazing. Like what a cool opportunity, or that's so incredible. I was so lucky. And not to say that I was, you know, a brat, but I just didn't see it for as amazing as it was when you're young and you're just doing stuff and like, cool, I'm on a TV show, like this is fun, and you're just doing your day-to-day thing. And then to look back at some of that stuff and just go, how many kids or how many teenagers get to do that? You know, how many people would love to try on the H2O mermaid tail and go for a swim, you know? And at the time it's just like, oh, this is kind of cool. Another random day at work. But to stop and actually look back on it, it's like, that was amazing. And the place now that H2O has in kind of culture, Aussie culture especially, which, you know, I wouldn't have known back then that this would all happen. It's even more amazing of just like, that was so cool that I got to do that, you know?
I had no idea of like the global scope of what the show was and what it still is, until like a couple of years ago was when I found out. I was like, oh, it played in America? What? And then I was like, Oh,
We had
not
a
just
billboard on
America.
Sunset Boulevard. The billboard, the shot of the main shot of the three girls, that was a billboard on Sunset Boulevard. You know,
Like,
like,
what? That is
yeah,
so
absolutely
crazy.
unreal. And I think as well, because it was a while ago and it was really pre proper social media, like there
Yes.
wasn't a lot of that going on. And I do remember while we were filming season 2, Jonathan, our producer, coming and saying to us, I can't remember the number now, but some ridiculous amount of countries that it had been sold to. And he was so excited. And like it was cool, but I just couldn't really actually process that. Like it was
Yeah.
just kind of such a weird concept of wow. And yeah, and he was saying, oh, you're going to be dubbed in all these languages and kids from over here. And he was saying, you know, because it was a big deal in the UK at that time as well. And he was saying, oh, so many people in the UK like love this show. And it was cool to hear, but it wasn't until later when everybody was more on social media and you were able to actually see it and
Yes.
see the fans and the impact that it was having. It was kind of like still a separate concept of like, cool, this show's really popular, like, so they tell me kind of thing. It really wasn't something that had any effect on me until years down the track. And I guess I was saying this to somebody only like yesterday or the day before, I think H2O being on Netflix and lockdown happening was kind of where it sort of surged again, because I had a few years of a lot of attention from it. It all died down and things kind of moved on, and then lockdown happened. And since then, and there's been, you know, obviously everyone's been on TikTok and all of that kind of stuff all happened at once. And in a nice way, I guess it's because it's like a comfort show for a lot of people when they're stuck at home and it's, you know, not the best circumstances. Put on something from your childhood or you want to watch something nostalgic. And I think it is really cool that H2O is that for so many people, especially people our age that were watching it originally and, you know, want to come back to it. But yeah, at first I was just like, where is all this coming from? Everyone's back. H2O, I'm being tagged in all this stuff. And it was literally like an overnight, all of a sudden it's a big deal again. It was like, oh, okay, it's back.
It's back.
Yeah, it's the power of the internet and social media and all that.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. That's my journey with it has been so crazy, because even when I first started posting these H2O videos, I was really just posting them for like my Australian friends, like in mind. Like I was like, oh, you know, and like, because my whole life, I've like all when I was going through high school and stuff, like my friends and I would always talk about H2O. And by that stage, even when I was in high school, which was like, again, like 11 years ago or something, we were saying, remember when we used to watch H2O? Like it was already at that stage, it was already kind of a thing that had exactly.
And the first few TikToks, I think yours would have been one of them. It had that feel to it of like the people who get this.
That's exactly, I've always just had so much love for the show. So I've never like mocked it with like malice, or I've never been like, haha, like it was so dumb, because I've always just loved it so much. And so everything that I've always parodied from it all those years ago, and then obviously now, has always come from a place of like, I genuinely think this show is amazing.
You can tell, honestly, that really shines through, and that's something that I wanted to say to you. Actually, I really appreciate it, because I think it's kind of easy to make fun of things, and it's easy to get a laugh by making fun or being mean about something, and I cop that all the time. And that was something I spoke to Cleo after she spoke to you, and I said, yeah, I would be happy to talk to Tyler, because I just don't feel like there's ever any mean-spirited feeling behind anything. You know, you're just doing what you love, and it is funny, but it's funny because it's clever as well. It's not taking the low blows of, you know, let's poke fun at these girls, or, you know, this dumb show or whatever, which there's plenty of that out there as well.
There is.
And I really appreciate that, because I think it takes more cleverness as well. I mean, I love your Encanto. That's my absolute
Yay.
I couldn't sleep last night because I was trying to find it. So then I was on your profile and I was scrolling down, and there was ones that I had missed.
Oh,
So I
really?
watched the entire musical basically because I'd only seen the one. I think you sent me the We Don't Talk About Charlotte
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
I was like, oh, that's so funny. And then I went to look for it and I was like, oh my God, he's done the whole thing. Thinking of the lyrics and writing the lyrics and hearing all the
Oh,
characters, and it's just absolutely awesome.
oh,
And I just
thank
think,
you.
yeah, I just think there's a something to be said for that because it's a lot easier just to make fun of something. And I think, yeah, I just really appreciate the way that you go about your humor. And but that's it, as you said, you do love the show, and that shines through, I think. So yeah, snaps for that. I
Thank you
really,
so much. I really, really appreciate that. I was saying to Cleo as well, because over the course of TikTok, I've done a lot of like Harry Potter and I've done
yeah,
Lord of the Rings.
yeah.
And I've got to the stage now where quite a few actors who have played the roles have seen the
Mm,
videos. And
yeah.
it always gives me so much anxiety because the same thing, I'm like, I never want these people to ever feel like
Yeah.
I'm mocking them or being, as you say,
Yeah.
mean spirited. And
Mm,
the other reason, which has been so amazing, is I've been, posting H2O for like 2 years.
yeah.
I do not remember reading a single comment saying like the show was so dumb or like
Yeah.
like you can look through every comment is like
Mm,
this show was my childhood. I like
mm.
you have made me watch the show. And so many people say like I got my husband to
Awesome.
watch the show with me and like he really enjoyed it. And it's the same like my fiance, like even though he grew up in Brisbane, but he had
Okay.
never seen the show.
Oh
And
wow.
so during lockdown, I showed it to him
He
and
has now.
he like genuinely like enjoyed it. And we're
Yeah.
saying, isn't it so funny that adults can watch it? Of course, you can like laugh at, like
Oh yeah.
the funny aspects of it. And I think that's what makes the show so amazing is that these were like real characters dealing with
Mm.
this situation.
I think
Yeah.
that's why people love it so much. And the cleverness of having those three leads was that there was someone for everyone to relate to.
Mm.
It was that classic Spice Girl thing of I'm that one.
Yes.
I'm so Emma, or whatever it is. And then you're so invested then in that character because they all
Mm.
had their own stuff going on. That yeah, they were mermaids, but it had such a real element to it, and they were still struggling with the things that everyone watching was struggling with as well. So I
Yes.
think yeah, I think that's also why it sort of has a special place in people's hearts too.
It's very obvious that you are nothing like Charlotte
Thank you
was.
for saying that.
Of course. And I mean, I just think it's so funny. I was talking to Cleo about this as well, but it's so interesting how many people don't really understand like like the actor is not the character. I was acting.
Yeah, that's literally what it's called is
Yeah,
acting.
right.
Yeah.
So how was it for you, like finding again, did you know that this was going to be like a villainous character kind of from the beginning, or was it more as you started filming and you started seeing where the plot was going?
I I did. I did know that she was like I knew the whole arc of how it was
Okay.
going to end up. We had all the scripts at the start. Um, and I, to be honest, was so excited about it.
Mhm.
I had never done a role like that before. I was always either the lead, which is like the straightest, normalist character possible,
Yeah.
or the friend or the daughter. Or was always the good guy,
Mm.
and I had never done something like this before. So I was so excited for the fact that she was evil. And a friend of mine had just done Pirate Islands, which was another series.
Ah, yeah.
He was the evil character in that, and
Cool.
we were talking about it, and she was like, "Oh, it's so fun! They go hard out for the evil characters. You're gonna love it." So I was just really excited, and that stuff doesn't really happen. The quote unquote evil stuff doesn't happen until quite late, where she really loses the plot. Towards the end of the series. So it was sort of that thing of getting her there and getting her more and more obsessive and all of that stuff that I loved doing and started having a lot of fun with as time went on. And it was kind of good, you know, you shoot out of order, but it's still done in blocks. So you can still have like, you know, a beginning, middle, end kind of vibe to it. And as we were getting towards the middle, I was just also starting to feel a lot more confident with the other cast and with our directors and things like that. And I was honestly just having so much more fun. The stuff that's biting me in the bum now, just making her really annoying, honestly. I started to just love it. And I was pushing it more and more as we were filming. And I mean, that episode of planning Lewis's birthday party, which is probably the one, it's probably the one that everyone hates the most. I just had so much fun, just really overdoing, you know, like the scene with the girls out the front of the juice net where Ricky's like trying to put in her ideas of the Charlotte's going, no. I had a ball doing that. Watching it back now, I can see why it frustrated people a lot, and I can see why everybody was like, I absolutely hate this girl so much. But at that point for me, it was just fun. And I was just like, I kind of went that route of just let's make her really annoying and let's make her, you know, trying so hard. You know, that girl that just tries so hard to make everybody like her and accept her, and it makes it worse. Like she just isn't helping herself because she's just trying so hard that she's so annoying. And then eventually the just never getting there, the never being part of the friendship group is what's just going to snap when she makes all these connections, you know, with her grandmother and all of that, which was, really fun at the time. But I'm still hearing about it every day 15 years later. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's still probably the most fun just as an actor that I've ever had. Like those roles, everyone says it, the villain is the fun role, and it really is.
It
like
really
I
is.
never look back and want a different role in that show, even now. Like it really, I just loved it. I loved getting to do something different. But yeah, we really did make her pretty annoying.
I think as actors, it's so funny because it's kind of is that double-edged sword of like, on one hand, yes, there are always going to be those people who come at me as the actor because they don't quite understand the difference. But then on the other hand, it's like, like I said, how much of an amazing job did you do to incite that reaction in people that is still happening 15 years later? Like,
that's what I tell myself.
Like literally,
no.
And you really have to. I really do think that that's what I love about acting. I want to make people feel, and I want to make them think about things, and I want to make them reflect. And if a character that you played is still having that impact on people so much later, like that's a huge credit to your ability as an actor. And it's also just, and like genuinely, I just think it's so impressive watching that show now as an adult. It's that character was so real, and I know Charlotte's, and I, of course, like we hate those people, like straight up.
Someone like that.
It sucks that, you know, people are going to view me as my character, but then on the other hand, like I did it. I understood the assignment. Like I really think that I genuinely,
I'll take it. And it is a comfort to think of it that way and just go, well, I wouldn't be having, you know, all of these inboxes if it wasn't a good job, you know, if it wasn't giving people those feelings and, you know, eliciting those reactions. So that's a positive. I do try and think of it that way. It's just, I don't know. I think with social media and things as well, it is a little bit what you're saying of people not separating the character and the actor. But I think it's also the fact that with people being on social media, it's like actors are more accessible just to everyone.
yes.
Whereas, you know, when you and I, because we're old, were growing up, we couldn't just go and directly inbox Raven or someone from a Disney Channel show and have a possibility of them seeing it. There was just no way to contact those people, and there was
Yes.
sort of a separation which just doesn't exist anymore. And I get it. I really do. I'm contacted every single day, and it's like the thought process is like watching the show, getting annoyed. Okay, what's that actor's name? Let me find her Instagram so I can inbox her and let her know. Which blows my mind that people would even think to find me and do that and let me know how annoyed they are. But it's just a different world now. You would never even think of
Yes.
that. You'd watch a film and you would never think of even trying to, yeah, get in touch with, and that's the pitfalls, that's the choices we make by having social media, I guess. And I connect with some amazing people, like yourself included. There's a lot of people that I just never would be able to meet. And so when I have my weekly think about should I stop Instagram and just not have to worry about this anymore, there are a lot of positives that come with it. But yeah, I just think it's so easy now to find people and
It
to
is.
make yourself heard and to get directly to them, which is exhausting,
It
I guess.
is. Yeah.
Probably it, rather than really upsetting, which it was originally. And I have had
Mhm.
some honestly pretty rough stuff. But now it's just to a level of like it's like a dripping tap. It's just every day. Yep, that was me.
That
Yep.
was
Sorry,
me.
sorry that I annoyed you to the point where you're here telling me about it. And yep, people will comment on every single photo, or they'll just try to be noticed and try to get me to interact back with them, I think, as well, as part of it.
Mm.
um, and that's been its own little journey for me over the
Yes.
last few years of just, yeah, it was a little bit of it when the show was out because kids were starting YouTube channels, so there were a lot of like compilation videos that kids would make, and the comments on those were very rough.
Mm.
But then that kind of disappeared for a long time, and now it's all back. Now we've got H2O back on Netflix. Everyone's got TikTok and Instagram, and it's coming at you from all angles.
Mm.
And there's not much that you can do about it except, take it in your stride, which I mostly do. If
Yeah.
I'm already having a bad day and I see something like that, it definitely makes it worse. But yeah, it's just been a really interesting ride. That filming the show all those years ago, I just never would have thought
Never.
this is how it would turn out, and I would still be hearing from people and dealing with all of this still.
Mm. I'm genuinely so sorry to hear that you have to deal with that.
But that's because you're nice.
So obviously you get all of these comments from people, which is not great, not great comments. But with the resurgence of the show, have more people kind of, I know that when you're teaching, like, do your kids talk to you about the show, and are they interested and excited to hear about, the experiences and all of that? Do you still get recognized like in public for
Yeah,
that?
definitely.
Yeah.
It's cool because it's younger kids who weren't even born
Yeah.
when we were making the show, and I just wouldn't think that they would even know what it was. I think of
Mm.
H2O as like retro now, and
Yeah.
it's for older people to watch nostalgically rather than younger kids to actually watch and love. But they do. A lot of kids do, and I have my regular classes that I teach, every week that are the same. But then I also freelance, and those are the ones when I'm a guest teacher, a guest choreographer, that all the kids are sort of waiting to bring it up, wanting to ask the questions, and it's great. Like it's
Mm.
something exciting, and I in that context, I never get sick of talking about it,
Mm.
because if people are excited about something that I've done and passionate, and and I also just know what it's like, not as an actor, just as a kid,
Mm.
to have a favorite show, or to have something that I would read or watch 100 million times and just think it was the coolest thing ever. So I know what that's like too. So
Mm.
if I'm part of a show that's that for someone, then of course I'm happy to chat about it and happy to hear what a big fan you are. And that whole feeling, like I was a huge Harry Potter nerd growing up, and
Mm.
that age where the films were coming out doesn't feel that long ago to me. I really
Yeah.
remember how it feels to love something and be a big fan of something. And I try to always kind of keep that in mind of what if I was meeting someone from a show that I love and I have all these questions, and they might be questions that I've been asked a million times, but that kid's so excited. And it's like, it is kind of a privilege to be part of something like that, because if you have a show that's on this level for some kids, it's a big part of their childhood. It's a big deal in their life at this time, and that's a privilege to be part of something like that. And that's just another thing to kind of keep in mind when it gets rough and people are awful. It's just like, well, it's still a show that means a lot to a lot of people, and it's very cool to be part of that and to be, in everyone's lounge rooms and
Definitely.
their laptops or every night while they're binging H2O. If it's people say, they come back and watch their favorite episodes after a breakup or when they're stressed, because it has that kind of, you just want something nostalgic from when you were younger.
Yes.
And that's cool to be part of something that is that for people.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's amazing, and it's definitely just something to keep in mind for me, of like, that is for some people what my shows were for me when I was growing up. So
100%. I think I do. And I mean, obviously I can't speak for you, but from my perspective, I definitely think that the good outweighs the bad. I think, again, the impact that you had playing that character, the fact that it's still making people talk, and the fact that it's still being so loved, definitely, I think outweighs like the bad, from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, it's nice to know that from like someone on the outside, because it doesn't always feel like that.
Definitely.
For me, but it is nice to know that there's other people that can see that and can see the positive side of it and go, well, it's still worth that she did that. It's still worth being involved. I am glad to hear that, because and I do sometimes think that, but not all the time. Sometimes, for a few months of filming, is all of this worth it?
Yeah,
and if somebody had told me some of these things that were going to happen years down the track, would I have been so quick to jump in and want to do this show? Maybe not. It was a really fun time filming, but it was just a few months and it was all over.
Yeah.
And it's haunting me every day for the rest of my life,
But that's the other thing that I think is so crazy as well, is that, like, when I was rewatching it again, as you said, I'm like, it really was only at the very end that Charlotte turned into that really nasty person. Like, it was such a short amount of time. And but again, it just shows like how much of an impact that it had. As I was watching through the season, it was kind of halfway through, and I'm like, when does she become a mermaid? Like, when does that happen?
I think the thing is, the evilness side of it is not what upsets people. They're annoying, stealing Cleo's boyfriend, the amount of times I get sent edits of that scene, stealing the locket from her or kissing Lewis or whatever it is, that's the stuff that kills people. And that's, I guess, is sort of similar to Cleo's type of thing, with Kim just being really annoying.
Yeah.
It's not that we're, actually doing anything wrong. It's not the evilness. It's just the, oh my God, watching this show, this girl is so annoying. And I think it's also a testament to Phoebe as well, because I think of the three, her character Cleo was the most loved. So when you come in and try to mess with her, the fans were not happy. Like, you don't steal my girl's boyfriend and try and take her powers. And like, it was that as well. You know what I mean? It was just very protective of her, because they were already in love with her from the first season. And that's, to be honest, what I get messages about the most is stealing Lewis. That's like what I get all the time, is I can't believe you would steal Lewis, and I can't believe you thought that you could do this. And
it's just like so funny to even like, and again, I know it's like exactly what we've been saying. These people they just don't understand. They don't have the process. But I just think it's so funny. It'd be like someone messaging me and be like, I did Little Shop of Horrors. And it's like someone messaging me being like, how could you feed him to the plant? Like, how could you do that? It's like, what?
Obviously, this is a mermaid show. So there are elements to this that aren't realism, you know. Yes, I saw someone's boyfriend, but 2 seconds later, we were making stuff out of water magic and swimming underwater with mermaid tails. So both of those things weren't real. The boyfriend part was also not real. Like,
oh God, I love it. So you wrapped the show.
Yeah.
And then you said, did you kind of go on to like audition for other Australian projects, or is that when you started to audition for like American stuff as well?
Oh, bit of both. Bit of both. I've had sort of a weird, pretty much from H2O onwards, probably the last kind of 10 years or the next 10 years after that was a bit of a jumble of figuring out what I wanted to do. I went to the States. I think I went to the States with plans of getting set up there. Did one video audition for a show shooting in Melbourne, got the role and ended up back home because that's just how the universe works.
That's how it works.
So I was doing that. I did go back to the States. I was in Canada for a little while as well, which had I decided to really knuckle down and pursue, I think is probably where I would be. I was in Vancouver for a few months.
Cool.
But I just sort of had a bit of a mind frame shift. I did a few more projects after H2O, bits and pieces. I was sort of struggling a little bit with just a few things personally after that time. And honestly did fall out of love with acting a little bit because of it, which was just never would have thought. I have been acting since I was six or seven. And yeah, all of primary school was pretty much working my whole young life and loved it. I don't know. I started struggling as I got older to get roles and get into the room on things that I was passionate about. So it started to become a lot more out of my control, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier, of just wanting to have some control over what you do and don't get to do, which it was just the hardest part growing up and realizing that I wasn't always going to get to do the things that I loved doing. And I was going to have to do things that I didn't like. I had a lot of jobs that I didn't enjoy, and that was not the best. And I also really started to struggle just with my image and getting way too caught up in how I looked. H2O was a big part of that, and the flack that I caught was a big part of that. I mean, as you know, if you've seen the show, I was bigger during filming that. I put on a lot of weight while we were filming. So I wasn't as heavy as that when we started. And for whatever reason, which I still don't know, I put on a lot of weight, and I think it's just an easy thing to make fun of when it's already a character that you don't like. Yes. And when it's already a mean, annoying, quote unquote annoying character. The fact that I was also much larger than the other girls was just, and still is to this day, such a stabbing point for people to really want to make fun of and make memes of and make slow motion videos of, like you name it, it's out there. And it really was just it was kind of like my ugly phase, like we all have that phase.
It's that age. Literally, exactly. That's like the worst age. That's when your body's changing.
Was it ever? Like, it was my first time really living by myself. I was living alone in this apartment. I was making great money. I'd gone from dancing 6 days a week to like nothing, swimming once a week, something like that. There was a lot of aspects to it. And yeah, it just became a thing really quick. And it was the first time in my life. I was a very skinny little kid. Yeah. And it was the first time in my life I dealt with any of that. And putting on weight and going through a bit of a quote unquote ugly phase is one thing. But of course, for me, it was during filming a show that was the one that broadcasted globally for everyone to see, that was my fat phase. Everyone saw my fat phase. So not great.
Not
And
great, but
really affected things a lot, like moving forward into the next roles and my next auditions. And it did become a thing, you know, not even from people in the public saying mean things, but it did kind of become a thing in the industry as well. And I was spoken to by people that I looked up to, and it became a really, really hard thing for me. And pretty much for the next few years, I just struggled with my weight. And I think I really went up and down, and I developed a really bad relationship with my own image, with eating, and with exercise. Just everything just went kind of crazy. And it just affected everything. I mean, I've said this to another actor friend of mine. I would land a great audition and spend much more time preparing the outfit to make sure that I didn't look fat, and worrying about how I looked and my skin breaking out or my hair or whatever it was, and much less time preparing the script and actually doing the acting work. And there was a fair few years like that where I would rock up not well enough prepared to an audition because all of my time was going into, I need to not look fat. I need to look as good as possible. And what am I wearing? And testing out outfits. And it just became consuming because I had dealt with it so much, and it just became such a big issue. And, you know, it affected other parts of my life as well. And that was sort of just always a thing in the back of my mind. And then I wouldn't get a role. And whether that was the reason or not, I would see who did, and they were skinnier than me, you know, and maybe they were a better fit for the role, or they were just, you know, a better actor or did a better audition. But in my mind,
it was because of that.
It was because of that. And it really started to get me down a lot. And sort of at the same time, I grew up dancing. My mum has a dance studio that I grew up dancing at. And in my early teens, I would sort of do little bits of like teaching and stuff on the side in between acting jobs, basically. She would just let me come and, you know, be a student teacher or whatever, just to keep me busy if I didn't have an acting job. And it wasn't ever a big passion. But at the same time as all of this started happening with acting, I really started to fall in love with dance, and my dancing got quite successful. We went to the World Championships, and it became much more of a big part of my life, the training and all of that side of it. And I really, really started to love it. And to this day, still really love the coaching side of things. And it just kind of naturally started to go that way. And I gave it one more shot, and I moved to Vancouver. And even then, my heart wasn't really in it. I was texting the girl who was covering all my dance classes like every single day. How's this going? How's this sending videos? You know, I was more focused on that, and ended up sort of saying to myself, all right, I think I'm just going to give acting a break for a second and just chill out. And it's funny because as soon as I did that, my weight just went completely normal. Everything stopped going crazy. I haven't really been fluctuating as much as when I was really stressed about it. I'm not thinking about it now when I'm kind of where I should be. You know what I mean? And same with my skin was a big issue as well. And I think it was almost like a stress thing that I was making it an issue because I was always worried about it. So it was a thing. And now I'm just like, I'm finally at a place with myself where I'm not constantly just thinking about how I look or what size I am. And, you know, and I sort of think maybe taking a step back was a good idea. You know, in my 20s, when it was all such a struggle, you know, that your 20s is such a brutal time in your life, you know, anyway. And then, you know, we'll see what happens down the track. If it's something as I get older, I might want to come, you know, back into. But I really want to get to a really confident, kind of strong place with myself first.
Genuinely, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so important to talk about the effect, I mean, everyone goes through, but especially as artists and people who are constantly judged for the way that we look and the way that we just are in ourselves. It's just, it's so, yeah, important to talk about. I think when you kind of start to let go of things, that's when things start to happen. And
you will never believe that until it happens to you, though.
And it's so frustrating.
I've been sort of learning only in the last few years, actually, which it's about, you know, the energy that you are putting out into the universe, and what you are thinking about is what your reality becomes, and all of that kind of stuff, which all of this stuff I learned from Cleo, by the way. So
I know, right? So good.
Into an ad for her and her
pass around the smile.
Pass around the smile. If
yeah.
you haven't looked at it, seriously, like genuinely. And that's not, I mean, we were in touch before that, but I wouldn't have called her like a friend. So I'm not just like pumping it because she's my friend. Genuinely, she really has made a massive impact on my life and the way that my toolbox of how I cope with things now. But that's a really big part of it. And she sort of set me off on this journey of kind of law of attraction and positivity and kind of creating your own reality, I suppose. And the way that then opens the energy flow of things to come more easily into your life. It's sort of like the more stressed and down you are, the more stressed and down you'll be. And the worse you think everything is, the worse it will be.
Brittany, it was so amazing to talk to you. Thank you so much. You are so incredible. We love you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is the most fun I've had interviewing in forever. So
thank you.
Last time we'll chat.
Not the last time at all, definitely.
Thanks, Tyler.